Hello, survivors, and welcome back to Dr. Alejandro's lab. Today, instead of talking about modding, I'm actually going to be starting a different tutorial series dealing with some information about the game that not everyone might know about. Today, we're going to be dealing all about with how weapon damage actually functions and things that people might not know about how damage stacks, how the increases work, or how some stuff that the game says works doesn't work the way we think it does. So, out here in my lab, I'm hanging out on a random bridge in Naviskane. Got my zombies lined up for all of you. And the goal is to showcase a few different things. One, how melee weapons are functioning. And two, I'll be showcasing how all the different ranged weapons function. Because melee kind of functions how you might believe it would. However, ranged weapons work completely differently. So one of the first things I want to show off is how some of the damage stacking happens. So, one thing to note, we have this steel club, does 34 melee damage. I don't have any skill points put anywhere right now. So when I hit a regular zombie, it should do 34 damage. So we're at 285. And there we go, minus 34. We expect that. Now, when we hit them in the head, we should have 2 times headshot damage. So it should go up to 68. So let me do some quick math. We got 51, so plus 17. So it should go down to 187? 183. Yes, it is 183. Sorry, 200 minus 17 is 183. There we go. So that is working exactly how we expect it to be. Now, sneak attack damage can work the same way. I don't know if this actually does any sneak attack damage. We're going to find out. 1.5. Alright, so the club does 1.5. Alright, so sneak attack damage, I didn't get to have the damage marker up for that. Because I can't stealth while in God mode, unfortunately. But we saw it was at 183 before, went back down to 136, so we lost 47, which that multiplication, yeah, it's about right. So one thing to note with how the game functions all of this is when you put these skill points in, so say I go to strength, I look at Pummel Pete, and I see Pummel Pete says deal 10% more damage with clubs. Alright, so I put it in there, and as you might expect, if I hit, I'll do 10% more damage, which is 3.4, so it's going to be harder to see that. Yeah, so it came out to about the right number. However, when we look at this, if the sneak attack is 1.5 times damage. So this thing is at 199. So we have 1.5 times damage. That gives us an extra 15, 17, plus the 3.4. So we're basically getting plus 20 damage. So, hey guys, Editing Doc here. So I made one mistake when I was talking about the damage. The reason the sneak attack damage on the club was 47 instead of what we might have expected as 51 is that 1.5 times sneak attack damage is actually on the base damage of the club, which is 26. So you get 1.5 times 26, which is 13 more. So 13 plus 34 is 47. And that's how we got that number. And that kind of proceeds all the way through the rest of it. So sneak attack damage and everything else also works off of the base tier 1 damage, not anything else. 54 damage. People might think, oh, alright, so we're doing 10% more damage on top of everything. But sneak attack and perks add together. So when we put that perk into Pummel Pete, and we get 10% more damage, it effectively means that our sneak attacks are going to be doing 1.6 times damage instead of 1.5 times. It's not base damage plus 10% of that damage, then multiplied by 1.5. No, all those different numbers get added together and then put together. So we're going to be doing an effective 1.6. So this thing is at 99 as we saw before. Let me give it a hit. I don't believe it hit in the head. I did not. Cool, so we did 50 damage there, which about what we expected. We were doing 47 with the sneak attack, adding in the 3 damage for going up 1 point in the Pummel Pete, and that gave us 50 damage. That's one thing people might not know, is how those perks add up together. So when you do sneak attack, or anything else that adds bonus damage, it all gets added together into one thing. So even if I go all the way up to 50% damage, all that will do is if I do a sneak attack, now I'm doing 2 times damage with that sneak attack. Because this is adding 50% more damage, sneak attack is adding 50% more damage. It works the same way with all the agility stuff too. All these different things that add the extra sneak attack damage in. So all of that kind of functions the exact same way. Now, where does damage actually multiply? The one spot where damage multiplies is headshot damage. So as we see from the base stat with strength, level 1 gives us a 200% headshot damage. With this is actually a multiplier. So this does go with everything else. So if I have Pummel Pete, and I bring it all the way up to 50% extra damage, if I was still somehow at 1 out of 10 here, then I would be doing 50% more damage, so 1.5 damage with the club, and then that would get multiplied by 200%. So headshot damage is the only actual multiplier that gets added on at the end. Sneak attack, perk bonuses, all the other bonuses from items do a straight addition to the damage, and then there's that end multiplier at the end if you have headshots. So if you get the headshot in, then it does an overall multiplier at the end. So that is one thing not everyone knows. So that's just a little bit of piece of information for you guys. It's not necessarily the most important thing out of everything we're doing, but I wanted to give you guys that piece of information so you know better how damage works and why, if you go up in your perks, like if you're doing actual stealthy build with agility and you're building up your archery skill and putting points into it, your sneak attacks with the bow aren't necessarily doing that much more damage if you're not getting the headshots in, because it's not getting multiplied, it's getting added in. Now, one thing that I do want to look at here, when it's coming across to all of these item pieces, here is the actual code for the steel club and how it does damage. So if we look at this, we can actually see how damage works with the club. One, the club itself has a baseline entity damage. So a tier 1 steel club has a base set of 26.2 damage to entities. This is our baseline, everything else kind of works off of that. Now, when we look at mods, each mod adds 10% more damage. So that's why you see the damage numbers go up pretty heavily, especially with the tier 3 weapons, because you're getting 10% more for every single mod that goes in. However, I want to show you guys what happens with the different tiers. So we have this 26.2% base for a tier 1 steel club. Now, this is one of the important lines. When we're going from tier 2 to tier 6 of the steel club, it goes up by 0.1 every time. So a tier 2 has 1.1 base damage. So it's 10% more damage than this tier 1 26. Up to a tier 6, which is 1.5. So you would have 1.5 times 26 is how much the base damage of your tier 6 steel club would be. However, with all of these items, there's also this randomness that goes in. So each tier boosts it up by a base of 0.1. However, there's always a plus or minus 15%. Which is why how there is a chance that you could have a tier 1 weapon somehow be stronger than a tier 3 weapon. Because the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 3 is 0.2 for base damage, but if the RNG works out in that way, the tier 1 could have like a plus 15%, and the tier 3 could have a minus 15%, and now all of a sudden their tier 1 is actually a little bit stronger than that tier 3. This happens with all the different weapons in the game. All of them have this random function to them, and that's where we see all those different variances and why you can kind of craft different things and get different numbers. Also, by looking at this, you can kind of figure out what the max might be. So I can open up a quick calculator. So with the steel club, the max damage ranking you can have as a base is 43 damage without any mods put into it. So if you have a steel club that has 43 damage as a tier 6, you have the strongest base steel club you could actually have in the game. That's how it works for everything else. I'm going to also take a look now at some of the ranged weapons and how those end up functioning, because it's actually extremely important to understand how the game looks at damage this way. Alright, so with ranged weapons, your weapon has this damage, this ranged damage on it. But in reality, the damage isn't coming from the weapon itself. It's coming from the ammo. So this compound bow currently has stone arrows in it, which have a base damage of 25. The different arrows you put in them affect the damage of the weapon. And different weapons will have different minuses to them, or pluses, depending on what weapon you're dealing with. In terms of the bows, so we have the wooden bow, we have the primitive bow, and we have the compound bow. This primitive bow, this actually starts with arrow damage minus 6. So this one actually has a slight bonus because it's at... Well, no, it is actually perfectly set. So we have a tier 1 primitive bow that has a base of arrow damage minus 6, which is why its range damage is 19. The wooden bow has arrow damage minus 4. And we actually see that this one actually worked out perfectly. It's just baseline. 25 minus 4 is 21 for the wooden bow. The compound bow has arrow damage minus 0, so it's just arrow damage. So we have 25 and 25. The crossbows work similarly, with the iron crossbow having bolt damage minus, I think it's supposed to be 4, but it looks like it's saying 6 here. I can double check that number. Alright, so I quickly double checked the game's code, and yes, iron crossbow has bolt damage minus 6, and compound crossbow has bolt damage minus 0, so just straight bolt damage. We actually see that here. Stone crossbow bolt 32, compound crossbow does 32. Stone crossbow bolt 32, iron crossbow does 26. So these are all baseline, just flat out tier 1 weapons with no randomness on them right now. That's kind of perfect. That's kind of what I was looking for. So we can actually see that the ammunition is what functions on the weapons, and they just have a flat bonus, or in reality a subtraction to them that affects it. Different weapons have different things. So if we look at the rifles, so if I go over here and look at the hunting rifle, the hunting rifle actually has a damage boost to it of plus 12. So we have 7.62 ammo. This is a little different because this is a tier 2, so it has some extra stats going on it. But normally a tier 1 hunting rifle should have 7.62 ammo plus 12 of its base damage. Now, if we went to the marksman rifle, the marksman rifle has 7.62 ammo plus 9 as its base. So it actually has less damage than the hunting rifle, but you get the actual magazine size. And then the sniper rifle also goes back up above. So the sniper rifle has positive above the marksman rifle in terms of ammo damage plus. So that's one thing when it comes to ranged weapons. Also, because of this, those perks you have actually function on the arrow damage. So if we look at archery, if we go up and we do 10% more damage, well, let's just say I have a stronger compound bow. Let's go ahead, grab this tier 5, which this one is saying it's supposed to do 33 damage compared to 25, but it's a lot stronger. However, this is just an overall addition onto the end. So, no matter what, the difference between here and here, if I have 5 points into archery getting 50% more damage, it's doing 50% more damage of this stone arrow. And then the compound bow extra damage is coming into play on top of it. So this extra damage you get for having a stronger bow doesn't actually come into play when you're taking the perks. So a lot of times the damage you're doing with higher level ranged weapons may seem lower than it should, just because the perks work off of the ammo damage, not the actual weapon damage itself. Now, there's one other thing I do want to look at with you guys today, and that is dealing with Spears. So these spears say target armor minus 20%, or target armor minus 31%. So this spear does 14 damage. This biker has 20 physical resist. You would think that if you actually stab the biker, you would do 14 damage because it has 20 damage resist and you're shredding 20 armor. However, that actually doesn't work. So this dealt 11 damage, which is 80% damage of the 14. The reason for this is this target armor is coded into the game as removing armor. But the resistance on these zombies is coded into the game as physical damage resistance. They're two separate things. So all these armor penetration things don't actually work with these zombies because this is physical damage resist and this is armor shredding. Same thing happens with the Penetrator perk, where you're supposed to ignore 15% of armor with firearms, archery, and spears. I take that. So again, base 14 damage. Fallen Soldier has 50% damage reduction. So this will go down to 7 by 50%. And that's what it goes down to. Even with 20 armor shredding here and 15 armor shredding from the perk. Because this isn't armor. Armor is only on characters. So all those armor breakthrough pieces only actually work in PvP settings, or where you're fighting like NPCs that might have armor. It doesn't actually work with any of these zombies. And that's something I want people to know, because there are a lot of people who go for spears or other weapons like this because they think, oh, this is going to work really well with all of these armored zombies. But it is a different buff. So sadly it also works the same way with AP ammo, because AP ammo is also coded in as negative 20% to target armor. And in the actual code for the game, it is written as armor. So that causes a little bit of issues, because AP ammo isn't actually working the way you might think it would. Just because they're kind of coded into the game as two different buffs. And that's why I want to do this example of showing you, okay, even with all this, the 35% armor shred, I can still only deal half damage to this. Or I can still only deal 11 damage to this. No matter how much I go up in it, it's still going to be the same way. So I do hope this was a little informational for you guys. I do want to show off another one that teaches more about how armor functions, because there's lots of interesting things that happen with armor as well. And I want to showcase that in one of my future videos. But this was just a really short demonstration about how damage works in the game. So anyway, thank you guys for coming out, hanging out with me. I hope to see you guys in the next one. This is Dr. Alejandro signing out. Hey everyone, so a little bonus for you guys, for anyone who stuck around all the way to the end of the video, I have something special for you. And that is, because zombies have physical damage resistance, not armor, I wonder how hollow point works. So, we have a gun. Pistol does 32 damage. Shoot the soldier zombie, and it should do 16. Does 16. Exactly as we expected. Hollow point ammo has 41 base damage. It gives plus 100% armor to the target. So you would think this would do 0 damage. Instead, it does 20 damage because the physical damage resist is cutting it in half. So this 41 is going to 20. So it looks like hollow point ammo is just absolutely the best ammo in the game to use. There's no downside to it because armor is not damage resist. If you're not doing PvP, hollow point ammo is all you want to use when it comes to fighting zombies, because it just does more damage with no issues. Same thing over here with a 20% damage reduction. We do 33, or you know what? I'll even put the armor piercing ammo on. So we did 33 or we did 26. So there's really no reason not to use hollow point ammo against every zombie in the game. Just one more check. You know what? We'll go all the way through. Let's check a demo. Shooting with armor piercing. All right. Did 13 damage. Cool. That's about what I expect off of the that's with the armor piercing. So we got 13 damage, hollow point. Well, I forgot the other damage number. So there we go. That was 15 damage. No, 16 damage. Even more. So there we go. We can see that Hollow Point is just absolutely the best. So there you guys go. Now this is Dr. Alejandro really signing out.